Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Hangout. I want to start by introducing our sponsors making this broadcast possible. Want to thank Apartment Snapshot, Kairos Water, and GPS Roof Leak Repairs. I'm Adrian Danila, your host. I'm gonna hand it over to Chris Moreno, my co-host today, to introduce our esteemed guest.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us live on LinkedIn. Today gives me a lot of pleasure to not only introduce one of our neighbors. It's always great to have people who are here from the South in Atlanta, in Georgia. But today we have a special guest who has extensive experience in operations, especially in leadership roles at multiple companies. People have nothing but great things to say about her as we were doing some diligence behind the scenes. But just her experience on budgeting, financials, diligence, third-party management, she's got it all. So I'm really excited to hear some of her secrets, some of her insights today, and a little bit about her story. So without further ado, want to welcome you, Kristyn, to the podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. This is a pleasure and what an honor. You say, Chris, extensive experience. So that to me means I'm old, right? I've been around for a long time. So thanks for that. But yeah, so gosh, how did I start in property management? Goes back quite a ways. I started actually in 1997. So I am from upstate New York originally. And of course, if you've ever been there, you know that the snow is pretty crazy. Summers are great, but had a girlfriend of mine and we just kind of got sick of the snow and we're like, you know what? We're not attached to a boyfriend or attached to a job. So let's go somewhere warmer. And we decided on Atlanta. We looked at a lot of different places and at the end of the day, we just up and moved. We didn't know anybody. We didn't have jobs. I think we maxed out our credit cards to rent a U-Haul and got our friends to help us move. A 16-hour drive in a U-Haul from New York to Atlanta. So a little bit crazy. Didn't have any money and didn't know anybody. So one of the first things I did is go out and look for a job. Had to pay my rent after finding an apartment, and so ended up doing a job at Gold's Gym. They hired me to just hang out at the front desk and check people in, and eventually had a recruiter from the property management industry that approached me and asked if I'd be interested in leasing apartments. And I was like, gosh, you know what? Never thought about it. So probably like so many of us in this industry, we kind of fall into it, right? I don't think we go to college necessarily and think we're going to be in property management. Hopefully we're going to change that a little bit, but we'll talk about that later on today. So yeah, I said, great, tell me about leasing apartments. I really wanted to have something that was more of a career path. And so I started, had a few interviews and started leasing apartments with Lincoln Property Company, now Willow Bridge. But that's how I got my first leasing job. Started there, went to the next position as an assistant manager and to learn everything I could about the next position and listened a lot. Did a lot of reading and was able to work my way up. So, and along the way had lots of great opportunities. People that believed in me and said, you know what, this girl can do something more. And so actually had a stint on the vendor side, which was pretty incredible. Had an opportunity to run my own management company. So many great opportunities that I'm grateful for. But yeah, it's one of those jobs that sticks with you, and you either love it or you hate it. So yeah, that was kind of my start from Gold's Gym, and again just worked my way up, and am in a position now that I get to do the best of both worlds, working with teams, working with clients, and it's pretty incredible. So that's a little bit about my journey and how I got started.
Kristyn, you mentioned clients, you mentioned the teams. I want to stay on that for a little bit.
Yeah.
And the question I have for you is, how do you ensure that operations are aligned with the values and goals of partners, investor partners, while also meeting the needs of our residents and also our teams? They're all our clients, our customers, whether they're external or internal. So how is
Right.
that balancing game? What are some good tips that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Adrian. And you're right. We do have a lot of customers in our business. So I think historically we have really concentrated on our residents, the resident experience, right? Our residents are there. They're the ones we're in the business for. They're the ones that ultimately pay our paycheck. So that has certainly been a huge focus for us as an industry. The customer experience from a resident standpoint, what can we do for them? But we have more customers. We have our clients. We have our investors, asset managers. We have our vendor partners. And then, really important, our own team members and our support departments. So I really, honestly, you have to understand what those values and goals are before you can decide what is aligned with what. So we really work to build trust through performance. That's the way that you do it. And whether that's with your team members or with your clients, your investors, we try to choose partners that align with our own company values. So if we do that, we know that we're going to serve our residents properly and in the fashion that we expect. So, I really try to look at taking hospitality to the next level, not only with our residents, but also with our investors, with our team members. Our team members work so hard. And so, how do we show them hospitality? So, that has been an interesting thing that I think we really have worked hard on as an industry, is to make sure that we're understanding the different ways and touch points to help all of our customers and not just the residents. So that has been interesting and certainly a focus for us.
That's great. I love how you share, among the different customers you have, from residents to your team members to your investors. An amazing organization we could probably dive into for on another conversation. But I'd love to maybe hear too. Maybe you can share an example of maybe a memorable time or ways you've seen collaboration across your corporate level in departments that really showed how to maximize returns for investors or even for your team on that performance.
Yeah, one of the biggest ways or things that I look at with collaboration are really on our lease ups. It's a it's a great question because we couldn't do anything without our support departments, right? And it's a definitely a huge effort. So I think our lease ups, as you guys know, for anyone that's done lease ups out there, we have these big checklists, and we want to make sure that we're hitting everything along the way. But there are pieces that the accounting team has to take care of. There's pieces that your IT team, your marketing team, and so really in our business, our regional managers are the quarterback of that. So they have to kind of bring all of our groups together and talk about those pieces and make sure we're hitting deadlines so that we can get to that bottom line, make sure that we're hitting it right out of the gate, and that we are really looking at the investment strategy for that ownership group. Is this a merchant build? Is it a long-term hold? All of those different pieces of information, really, we have to pay attention to that because we have to know how to execute on that business strategy. So having all of those support departments do their parts, it's amazing. There's a lot of moving pieces, but I think that is a really big one where all of your support departments are coming together to make sure that that owner or that investor is getting everything out of it that they want, whether it's the merchant build or long-term hold, and going for value or velocity. So I think that's a great example of how they all come together to help with that bottom line.
Christina, you had an amazing career, stellar career. You work for some of the biggest firms in a country, hundreds of thousands of units under management.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you to share some of the great lessons that you learn along the way, especially for those that are looking up to someone like you and say, one day I want to be like Kristyn. I want to be like her. I want to be a VP or a president of operations or run a company or run my own company, management company.
Yeah,
What are
sure.
some great lessons that you learn along the way?
I would say, and even in my own path of moving up, is be curious, ask questions, read books, go to that next level. One of the things that helped me in my career of moving up was, you know, sitting next to, when I was in leasing, I would sit next to my assistant manager and say, teach me, what are you doing? How does this work? I want to know all about it. I probably irritated many people, but just would, kind of push my way through and ask those questions. Knowing that I wasn't going to be getting a paycheck for that job, but trying to understand it and trying to learn it. So asking those questions, being curious, learning everything that I can. We have a lot of resources through the apartment association alone, even some great books out there to read about leadership. And so really working hard, going to the association events and meeting people and talking to people about what they do. Because the great thing about our industry is that, back in the day, we used to have this path of you started in leasing and then you were an assistant manager and then you were a manager. Well, that's really not for everyone, right? But we have a lot of vertically integrated companies out there. So we have opportunities with marketing and IT and accounting, acquisitions, development. There's so many different paths that just looking and asking those questions of different groups and understanding, you start to hear a little bit more about what you might be interested in. So I would say learn everything you can, go to events, ask questions. Don't be afraid to put your name out there and say what you're interested in. Tell that person, tell whomever your supervisor is, I want to be in this next position. How can you help me get there? How can I help myself get there? So, that person in that next position, that's the position that they're in. They got there somehow. So really being able to be smart, kind of push your way a little bit, and learn that next step is really important. But putting it out there and having people know what your goals are is one of the most important things, because I will tell you, they will help you. If they're anything like, what I have experienced in my career, people want to help. They want to help you get to that next level. So just ask, be curious. Again, read a lot of books, read articles, listen to podcasts. If you don't have time to read the books like me, sometimes I will listen to them on my way to work. So anything that you can do to be engaged and be involved, I think is a huge help for getting to that next level.
It seems, obviously these nuggets that you're sharing are so helpful. I completely agree. Like learning, constantly having that curiosity, but I think you have an unfair advantage. Yourself and your experience of getting to learn from some of the best in the industry. And I think something else you touched on, which is it has to come from the top, and it
Yep.
has to be people walking the walk, not just saying and then disappearing. And I've been fortunate enough not only to meet a lot of great people in the industry, but specifically at Gables, Sue Ansell, I've had
Mhm.
multiple conversations with, Donna Summers,
Yep.
Gigi, and the rest of the team. And one of the things that stands out to me is how intentional they are. I'm actually like getting chills right now, because whenever I meet with them or see them at an event or at an MHC, they're very intentional. They answer the question with an example, and they lead and they are open about what they're working on. They're not trying to hide stuff. So I
Yep.
kind of want to get your thoughts. Like, how do you create a culture like that where your executive team, it seems like that's a superpower for you all to recruit some of the best talent in the industry. Could you share a little bit about like, how does that happen? How do you get people away from hiding to actually sharing openly with other people?
Yeah. Well, and I'll give you a good example. We actually, so at Gables, we have a Gables Leadership Institute. And so we really focus on our leaders and people that want to move up. And we invest time and money into training. And so I was recently actually at a graduation, had some great people that graduated from our Leadership Institute just this past week. And our entire senior vice president, president, our whole leadership team was there to help and congratulate this leadership team. And I will tell you, I took a video because I was so impressed. But speaking of Sue Ansell, she stood up there, and we had people part of that, the Gables Leadership Institute from all walks of life. We had accounting team members, we had service team members, we had new business members. So we had a very diverse group that was there. And Sue Ansell stood up in front, and she made the remarks about each and every person in that group. And she knew all of them. She knew their backgrounds. She knew what they had accomplished. And the fact that she was so involved, that speaks volumes. She knew these people. She knew what they had been through. I mean, it's impressive. There's a lot of companies that you don't get that. But she is involved. She's there. She's ridiculously smart, by the way. And so there's that, and that's also great. But the president of our management company, you mentioned Donna Summers, as we went through and we listened to these presentations. So we give these groups some different hard stuff that we're working on. How do we onboard better? How do we make a better experience for our team members? And they went through these presentations and just honestly knocked our socks off. It was incredible to watch. And, I watched as Donna made her way through that crowd and told each individual how proud she was of them. And made specific comments, right? It's not just like, hey, great job. She listened and she paid attention, and she said specific things about their presentation that made them know that she was paying attention. And it's incredible. Coming onto the Gables team, one of the things that you see is people come to Gables and they stay a long, long time. We have people that have been with Gables 25, 30 years. There's a reason for that. And so that culture piece is so important, but it starts from the top. Having those types of leaders that are engaged, and know their people and their teams, know what they're capable of, and they're involved. So that's a huge deal. So yeah, I appreciate that you brought them up, Chris.
Well, and I'll say before I hand it back over to Adrian, there's like a list of like 6 companies that I would ever want to work for. And Gables and the team, definitely, you all stand out. So, but I'll pass it over to Adrian.
Thank you.
Before going to my next question, I want to acknowledge those of you in the audience. Thank you for joining us today in a significant number. Please type in your questions for Kristyn. We're going to take questions from the audience and ask her on your behalf. Kristyn, we went over internal and external customers. I do want to go back a little bit to our supplier partners, right? More often than not, I think I've seen relationships that are not, basically looked at as equal, like a real partnership that goes both ways, a two-way street between us as operators. I name myself an operator because I was one for 20 plus years, and then them. What are some things that we could do to ensure a strong partnership between us, the operators, and them, the supplier partners, to create a great environment, great partnerships?
Yeah, it's a great question, Adrian. I've been on the vendor side, and it's hard. It was so rewarding and it was so fun building my sales team. Gosh, I'm dating myself by saying I was at For Rent magazine when we had a print magazine, but it was so rewarding. I loved it. I will tell you, it was probably one of the experiences that I learned the most actually about property management. And the reason for that was having so many different clients. You get to learn something different about what each company does really well. And so you take pieces from each one, you kind of put that together. And it's just incredible. So we couldn't do it without our vendor partners. So to us at Gables, our vendor partners are a really important part of what we do every day. And part of it is being available. We are always we're working 24/7. Sometimes we put out a lot of fires. We've got investor tours or budgets that happen and things like that. But truth be told, we need our vendor partners. We couldn't do it without them. And so being available to chat with them about your business and what your needs are. Right? They're on the sales side. And so they spend a lot of time listening to what we need in order for them to determine, is their product or their service something that will help us? And so that part of that partnership, I think, is so important. Just learning about their business. How do we help them get involved in the apartment association? That's part of our job, honestly, as leaders, is helping our vendor partners get involved, helping connect them to other management companies, other people that they might need to network with. But I find that being involved and asking them questions and thanking them, honestly, thanking them. They support so many of our events. We were just at an event yesterday where it was Maintenance Muscle, which you probably a lot of you guys today know. We used to have Maintenance Mania. Yesterday was kind of our first Maintenance Muscle. So much fun. But our vendor partners were there. They were supporting us. They were chatting with us. It's a really big deal. And I will tell you that, when I train my teams, I let them know that, regardless of who walks in your front door, you stand up, you greet. If it's a vendor, if it's, a resident, whomever it might be that walks in your door, they're deserving of respect. And our vendor partners work so hard. And it's tough. They'll send out an email or they're trying to meet people. And so things like getting involved in, I know we participate in the reverse trade show. And that is great. We get to meet tons of new vendors that are trying to be involved in the industry. So we participate in that and try to make sure we're getting back to people and matching people up. Sometimes a vendor might not be a right fit for us at Gables, but they might be a great fit for another management company that we know. So just being friendly and responsive, being transparent. Maybe it's something that, the pricing doesn't work for what we're doing. But I think having those conversations and making sure that you are paying attention and giving them the time is a really important piece, and being genuine. That's it. It's good manners. So help them understand your needs and how they can help. So that's kind of how I go about it.
Great. I love that. And you're getting some great love in the audience here and some comments
Okay.
about Gable's Proud, about
Awesome.
associations and absolutely I
Love it.
think definitely getting in real life is a huge thing. It sounds like for you. Um, and I'm curious, you talked about hospitality, you talked about supplier partners, you talked about obviously the resident experience.
Sure.
What are some, I mean, this is kind of an open-ended question, but love to get your insights on how you think about technology, because last week we had Ron Wenzel out of Orlando, and he was talking about how
Yeah.
as a CEO, he gets 10 to 20 emails a day of people asking him for his time or to show him a demo or a product. So how do
Yeah.
you, number one, think about technology and the use of your time? And then number two, what technologies maybe how you go about it? Is it more focusing on just multifamily technology, or is it even looking to other sectors? Kind of like you were talking about with hospitality or retail or other applications of technology to bring into our sector, and maybe how you're streamlining your operations.
Yeah. I know, we use technology all the time, right? There's always the latest and greatest and what's coming on, whether it's smart home technology or AI and all of the different things that come on board. But I will tell you, we have great, at Gables, we have great support departments, and everyone in that way has their own specialty. So to be honest, all of those emails that come in, I really try to place people in the right spot because I may not always be the right person to, discuss IT or some of those details, some of the, digital campaigns that our marketing teams are specialists with. So what I try to do is really kind of connect whoever comes in for what their business is. I try to understand what it is exactly so I can make sure to connect them with the right people. Obviously, technology, we use it in a lot of different ways. We use it to enhance our resident experience. We have smart home technology, all those types of things. We know there's tons of technology out there that's shaping the future of multifamily. But yeah, I would say that honestly, from a hospitality standpoint, we try to make sure that that hospitality is not just saved for our residents. We really try to work on, and I try to teach my teams how that hospitality can work with vendor partners, with our investors, and really most important are after our residents is really our team members. And so that's a really important piece. So the technology is important, but some of that human interaction, I think, is more important. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Hopefully,
You did. Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
So next, I would like to go and pick a question from the audience.
Okay.
Melissa, Melissa Perez. Melissa Perez wants to ask you, what does it being a great leader mean to you?
Being a great leader, what does that mean to me? It means investing in my teams. To be honest, I am a team builder. I'm a mentor. I love to train. So investing in my teams is what means being a great leader. Listening and empowering the teams. I love to hear their ideas. I hope that I'm always an approachable leader, so that my teams know that they can come to me with anything. I think I've taught them, like love the ideas. I want the feedback from everyone. You'd be amazed at the type of um, uh, ideas that come from our teams. I was out at one of our properties, and one of our service team members was talking to me about how important the school systems are at that property. And he had all these ideas of how to get that out to the prospects, right? He's our service manager, and I just loved it. And so, everyone on the site teams, they have my personal cell. They know that I want to hear from them. They know that I'm open to feedback. And look, I don't have all the answers. I need my teams every day, and I hope to make a difference every day, even if it's something small. So I feel like a good leader has integrity, is able to show up for their teams and really be able to give back by hearing what do they want to learn, what are they passionate about, and then it's my job to help them get there. So at the end of the day, I'm a support person for all of my teams. So I want to hear from them. I want to know what they want to do, whether it's personal or professional, because it is part of my job to get them to that next step, whatever it is that they want to be. Even if it's not in the next step on the operation side, it might be learning about development. It could be going to the support teams. And so I think that is the biggest piece, is really knowing how to invest in your teams, learning about and listening about what they want to know about and how they want to grow. Because it's not always in the ways that you think. So I think that it would be my answer to that. So thank you, Melissa, for asking that question.
That's great. We've got a very engaged audience on YouTube and on LinkedIn now. And
Awesome.
I think a key thing, obviously, with operations, we're in the physical world, right? We have residents who need things, and they expect things more than ever to happen faster, especially in this day and age of TikTok and social media and things going viral. So I'd love to maybe hear an example of maybe a challenge you faced, whether it's a challenge that you've been seeing more of, or maybe a challenge of how you're focused on overcoming that, and maybe balancing the needs of these residents who demand on demand feedback and service, even as sometimes we're having centralization or a lack of workforce sometimes. And so how do you balance that, and maybe maybe a way you've used technology or some kind of way you've overcome that challenge?
Yeah, you know what? That's a tough one. I think that a lot of time our residents feel that we're the big bad owners, right? Or that these owners have all of this money, and so they don't realize and they don't see the side of it where our owners have increased taxes and insurance or debt rates that are fluctuating. Um, on the flip side, for our residents, there's inflation. We have a lot of our residents who, as an example, they're not getting the same increases at work that they're experiencing, in the environment and in the market for costs. So that's really tough, right? Ultimately, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our owners and our investors, and each one's a little bit different, right? We have different investment strategies on each asset. So, how do you make money for the owners and increase rents or increase ancillary income, knowing that your residents are facing challenges? And it's tough. I'll be honest, we don't always have all the answers. And there's times where we can't overcome some of those things. But I think that the genuine nature of my team and the transparency of talking through things with people and involving the teams, the collaboration piece, we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. How do we come up with ideas? What are some things that we can do to give back to the residents that aren't going to cost our owners, $1 million? So really it's a constant state of, I would say, troubleshooting and looking at ideas, and really, again, with we did a budget boot camp in Atlanta, a while back, and we did a cap rate challenge. And I had the service managers in there, and I had the general managers in there, and we were talking about cap rates and looking at expenses. We all expected that 2024 was going to be a tough year, probably across the board for everyone. And so understanding that every dollar counts is a really important piece. So that's kind of bringing in how that's helping our ownership groups of making sure our teams understand that piece of it. And then really opening up to the teams to collaborate on ideas. How do we keep the quality at our properties, but how do we look at those expenses? What can we do differently? And it really was eye-opening for the teams. I loved to see the service teams get involved in the cap rate challenge. We did the math. We were coming up with ideas. It was awesome. So I would just end that with saying, we don't have all the answers, and we can't always overcome some of those challenges. There's going to be something different every day. But I think if you're focused on it and you bring your entire team to talk about it and think through it, you're going to be in a better spot.
I love that you're describing out there how to get the buy-in from the teams, and the fact that you're including your service teams, like you get them in and you expose them to what the business plan is. They have to understand, why we might not have money to spend on so and so. Just because there's some financial objectives, it doesn't mean that we have an investor or we're greedy, right? We don't want to spend the money. When there's a business plan, certain rules got to be followed, certain steps got to be followed. You can't just go all over the place. Like you said, fiduciary responsibility. You can't just be irresponsible with somebody else's money, especially when you're the manager.
Absolutely.
So, Kristyn, next I do want to touch on something that AJ from the audience. AJ is a technician, maintenance technician. He's based in North Carolina, and he made a comment. He said that my first trade show showed me a lot of value in social currency and being able to get out there and really connect the dots in an industry you're working in. You mentioned earlier when you were mentioning some pieces of advice for those that are looking up to you and want to become more than what they are today. You mentioned go to the industry events. So I want to ask you, how important was networking for you and building connections and building a personal brand in your career?
Gosh. I mean, I can't tell you. It's one of the most important, to be honest. And networking looks different to each person. So what networking means to one person can be completely different from how I network. I like to talk to people. I like to understand what they're looking for. Again, I use the word passion a lot, but I tend to not ask people what motivates them. I ask them what they're passionate about. So going to these events, and I will tell you, I go back to this one we were just at yesterday, the maintenance muscle in Atlanta, and saw so many past team members that I had worked with, and so many that came up to me and wanted to talk about what they're doing now and what they learned. And it was so exciting. Um, but going to those events and meeting as many people as you can, and again, learning. There's so many different vendors out there that do so many different things. And I've seen a lot of people that go from our side of property management onto the vendor side, and they'll come back or they'll go back, so it goes both ways. But you have to be engaged. You have to talk to people and ask questions and be involved. Get on a committee. Those things are so rewarding to work through that. I love being involved. I'll give a shout out to Dr. Debbie. Years ago, she got me involved in the starting of the Georgia Apartment Industry Education Foundation, and we were able to actually go out to Georgia Tech and UGA and teach classes. We would talk about property management and get the word out there about it. And that piece is so important. And our service teams, like, there's so many different things that they can do. I mean, I sat at the table yesterday with probably 5 or 6 of my service team members, and the conversations that they had were incredible. And there were a ton of people there. So there's all different management companies, and we're talking to all different groups. So going to those trade shows, learning about who does what, talking to different people. Sometimes you find that there is a position that you like better than the one that you're in. Funny story, I was with Greystar years ago, and I was a director. And so I had regionals that reported into me, and I ended up getting involved with the Greystar investment group. And we had a lot of big JV partners, and it was the first experience I had, honestly, with lease ups. And I was so excited about it just because I had started to learn about it, that I finally got to a point where I was convinced that being in property management was a career path for me, because that piece of it excited me so much. And so without getting out there and asking questions and seeing what else is available and talking to people, I don't think that you are able to get all of that and see all of that. So yes, go be engaged, ask questions, reach out to people. I love to talk to people, whether it's my own team, whether it's anyone in the industry that's interested in moving up or moving to a different position. So always feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to share any experiences that I have and give any pieces of advice.
This is great, and we've got. I'm seeing some people in the audience here who speak a lot on mentorship and talk about their careers, having spent decades in the industry. And
Yeah.
I think I'd love to ask you. We all have those people who've made a significant impact. Who are some people, maybe, and you can call them out if you like, who've made
Yeah.
like an incredible or positive impact on your career? You talked about Dr. Debbie as being a good example, but maybe is there someone early on in your career who pulled a chair out for you, or did something small that actually made a huge impact for you?
Yeah, you know what? There's so many people in my career that I could kind of point out, and so many names that I could, say and give shout outs to. But I'll tell you a funny story. So when I started at Lincoln Property Company, and worked my way up from a leasing position to an assistant manager position, and ultimately to a manager position. We had a third party deal, and we had an owner visit coming up. And my regional at the time, I think she's still there, but Mary Cook Detweiler was my very first regional. And I'll tell you a quick story. So we had this, this ownership visit coming up, and we had apartments that were not ready. They were not made ready. We needed to get things in place. They were coming out quickly, and Mary Cook Detweiler taught me how to show up for your team. She probably doesn't know this because I've never told it to her, but she taught me how to show up for her team. She also taught me how to use a caulk gun. And I will tell you, I will do so many things for my team. Please don't ask me to caulk. I'm horrible at it. But at the end of the day, Mary Cook Detweiler came. She had her tennis shoes on, and her and the rest of my team, we got together. We put T-shirts on and our jeans, and we went and we punched those apartments, and we got them ready for that owner visit. And that was a huge deal to me. The fact that she was there and involved, and it made a definite impression on me from early on. This was very early on in my career, and I was like, gosh, this is my regional manager. She's helping me. I need to get these units ready. I don't have the resources necessarily to bring other people in. We've got this meeting coming up with these very important owners. And so that was pretty incredible. So you ask about it, in early on. And if, Dr. Debbie, gosh, I think everyone knows Dr. Debbie. Her contributions to our industry are endless. She was the one that brought me into the Education Foundation, but to be honest, she's been a very big part of my career the whole entire time that I've been here. She's been one of my champions and one of my cheerleaders, and she's invested in me ever since. She's probably the one that I learned from in the right way to invest in your teams without doing hand holding. So that was pretty incredible. My family has been a huge cheerleading group for me. They're awesome. Always have stood by my side. So I, have to give a shout out to them. But to be honest, and this may sound cheesy, but it's true. My teams are honestly the biggest part of why I do what I do today. I think we've all had those days in property management where we're like, why are we here? Why are we working so hard? You're working 24/7, it's a weekend and you're getting calls and you're wondering, gosh, is this for me? And then you come back from traveling and you have a text from a past team member that worked with you 10 years ago. And they mentioned the impact that you had on them and how you taught them something that made a difference. Or you have someone that sends you an email and is so interested in being back on your team because of what they've learned from you. Those are the things that keep me doing what I'm doing. It's that type of feedback from my team members of the difference that I have made. And you don't think about that a lot. Sometimes it's a kind word. Sometimes it's a pat on the back or spending time with someone, 20 minutes, half hour. Like, what do you want to do? How can I help you get there? But those are the pieces, to be completely honest, that keep me doing what I do every day. That's the most important piece. So yeah, my teams are incredible.
Kristyn, you mentioned in more than one occasion how great it is to be a part of this amazing industry. And I just wanted to say, like, on this broadcast alone, I'm seeing here in our feed Paul Bergeron. Hi, Paul, and Tony Souza just dropping by saying hi. How amazing is that? Friends from all over the country just dropping by and hanging out, because that's what we do here. We hang out and we have a great time.
Yeah.
So it's truly amazing, right? And humbling too, right? For someone to give you the gift or the attention and the gift of time, it's the ultimate thing, really. For someone to give you time to be a part of, whatever, an event with you, anything. It's just a testament of how great we are as an industry and how fortunate we are to be in the industry.
Right. And it's hard to give the gift of time, right? We have deadlines and demands and everything happening. So to make that time and think about it when you're really planning out your week of how do I spend even 20 minutes talking to one of my service managers or one of my accounting team members or anything. It's really it's an important piece. So you have to schedule it because you have to be able to make that time. That piece is so important to building teams and really building that reputation to a point where people hear about you and they want to come work with you. They want to be a part of something bigger. They don't want just, the leasing position. They want to be a part of something great. And so it's pretty incredible. You're right, Adrian.
Uh, as a follow-up, or not a follow-up, really going into like a slight different direction, things
Sure.
that people don't typically talk about, right? We want to be positive, want to inspire people, but we also are human, and we have challenges. And my personal experience was that, as a leader over there at the top could feel very lonely. Did you have this feeling throughout your career, like feeling very lonely at the top?
It can be, and you hear that a lot. It's lonely at the top. I will tell you that I don't see it as a climb up to the top. I feel like we're all involved in supporting each other. And so when I do feel that and I do feel a little bit lonely, the best cure for me is going out on site. It is always pretty incredible to go and spend time with my teams. That's where I get my energy from. I know I mentioned that already, but they're so engaged and my service teams. I mean, I brag about them all the time. I brag about some of my investors. I mean, we have great investors that invest into their teams. So yeah, it can be lonely at the top. But to be honest, I like to say I get to do this. Not that I have to do this. I get to do this. And that is, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I have earned the trust with my teams, that they know I'm going to have their back. And sometimes, even if there's things that I can't necessarily make happen, I'm going to try, or I will at least be honest with them and say, gosh, you know what? I can't do this, but here's why. And, try to give them the why behind it. But that's truthfully what it is for me, is just going out and spending time with the teams, listening to some of their challenges and hearing some of the great things, some of the great owner visits that they had, and some of the great objections that they overcame, or different things that have happened with the team. So appreciating them, showing them appreciation. So those are the parts that I think keep me from being lonely, is when I'm able to just go out and spend that time with the teams.
This is great, Kristyn. So many specifics, and I love the story shares. I'm really curious. Like, I think about, a piece of advice or a nugget, and I always think of specific people in my life who've shared these nuggets. For me, like, one of the things I've realized is, like, be careful of experts. Learn from experts, but also go try and solve the impossible. I'd love to
Yeah.
hear maybe from you, maybe something you share with your team, or you might share with this audience of people who are listening, maybe some advice you could impart them either on their career or how to go out and solve challenges in multifamily.
Yeah, I mean, I come back to some of that of being curious, because asking those questions and having that will, a lot of it, Chris, I will tell you, starts with hiring right. That's a really big piece. I don't think we talk about it enough in our industry. We say, how do we hire for talent and things like that, but I am not a big resume person. I think people put a lot of stuff on there that they think are the right things. When I hire for energy. I want people that have integrity, people that are excited, but mostly people that want to be a part of something bigger. Be a part of something bigger. It's not, when I hire, we obviously have a position. We have a leasing position open, or we have a technician position open, but I want them to be involved in the company. I want them to be involved in giving back, sustainability efforts. We have so many different pieces of what make our company great. And so those pieces are really important to understand, again, what people are passionate about. And so starting with hiring, and then empowering your teams is really important. Because if you're hiring the right group and you're hiring for people that have your same core values, then the empowering part is, I think, is easy. You have to share that vision with your teams. Let them know what those expectations are. Give them the tools to be successful, and then hold them accountable, but give them that support that they need, and give them those check-ins and those pats on the back and the kudos, and have tough conversations sometimes, right? We all know that not everybody does a A-plus job every time. So how do we talk through that? How do we give them that immediate feedback and that constructive criticism? But I think it all starts with hiring that right group.
Kristyn, we're only around for a limited period of time, in our jobs, in our careers, and in life in general. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about legacy, right? What would you like your legacy to be? How would you like to be remembered when it's all said and done?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one, Adrian. I would say my legacy, I would like to be known as a team builder that builds trust for people that want to collaborate and, again, be a part of something bigger as we work to build that team. Um, and really to know that I've made a difference, even if it's a small difference. I try to make a difference every day. So if I can inspire other people to feel that same way and make a difference, that's what I'd like to be known for. Someone that has built great teams and made a difference and made an impact in someone's life, that has made it maybe a little bit better.
Love that. Love that. People don't always remember what you say, but they remember how they make you feel, right?
Yeah, got it.
And, and I'm curious, Kristyn, as you think about, like, you talked about, people who are learning, you've got leadership. And oftentimes, I remember early in my career when I was at Macy's Corporate, I remember like sitting down at a table and I didn't feel like I was welcome sitting down with the vice presidents when I was the newbie out of college. And I'm curious, like,
Sure.
what advice do you have for other leaders out there who maybe haven't been told the best way? They maybe been promoted in new roles, or they now have a team. What's maybe some of the advice you have for leadership and how they can support like up and coming leaders, or to find those people? And I know it might be tough to give away some of your secrets because you're probably trying to attract talent to Gables, but if you could
Right,
share something,
right.
that would be really cool, of how to impart onto others in the audience who are trying to think about how to build their leadership skills.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's about having genuine conversations, talking to people about what they want to learn, and then figuring out how do we get them there? How do they want to grow? What do they want to know about? And then really determining a development path for those emerging leaders. We have got a great program. It's something that I honestly, in all of my different companies, have not seen anything as great. But we have a development program where we have onboarding mentors, we have skills mentors, but we have a program where you can go in and really talk about what you're interested in. You can talk about the skills that you do have, what you want to learn about, and it will actually match you up with certain mentors. And how incredible is that, to be able to have all of these resources within the company? So, being able to pair someone that has some of those leadership skills with someone who is up and coming, and being able to make that investment in them and be able to sit down and take the time. How do we get you to that point? And really putting it in writing and then working with them on it. Having that follow up. Hey, we talked about you reaching out to the marketing team and learning a little bit. You were interested in learning about our digital campaigns and how they work. How did that go? Let's talk through it. And I think having those genuine conversations with people builds that trust. They know that you're invested in them as a person, as well as not just what can you do for me. How many leases can you get? It's so much more than that. So having those development plans, putting them in writing, having those goals and making it a focus, and then helping hold them accountable and keep them on track for what they want to do, I think is a big piece. So it, again, just comes down to investing in your teams.
Kristyn, I want to take a look forward, right, as much as we can, and I want to ask you to share with us what are some trends that you see happening or emerging in 2024 and beyond. And they could be technology, they could be operations, they could be
Okay.
investments, any type of trends that you see significant this year and beyond 2024.
Yeah, one of my most favorite trends, I'll tell you, Adrian, that has come up is wellness. So I think, and I don't know, sometimes I don't know if we're following the hotel industry or if they're following us, but wellness. I think it came out of COVID and people feeling, suffocated and having to stay inside, and now people are coming out, and we're learning about how great it is to have some of these wellness things and to be healthy. People want to be healthy. So, we have a lot of people that live with us in our apartment communities. So, how do we help with that? So, one of the trends that I've seen, only in the hotel industry, but also now in the apartment industry, and it's one of my favorites, is our amenities that are customized to wellness. So, meditation rooms, red light therapy. Oh my gosh, so many different. We have cold plunge tanks, right? That's a new cool thing. Wellness studios. So how do we customize and really look at the amenities that we have, and figure out how do we do something more? People don't want necessarily, of course, they always want a pool or they want a fitness center, and those are all important pieces, but they want something more. They want to feel connected, and they're very interested in the wellness piece of it. We've actually gone as far as creating some really interesting job descriptions and interview questions and things for leasing associates that want to be involved in wellness. And so it's been a very cool trend that I just love it. I think that it will continue. And so that's been something, really neat. Obviously some of the same trends of flexible workspaces, but amenities that just blow it out of the water. I've seen a lot of new development now have smaller units, maybe some higher end finishes, but really development that is looking at those amenity spaces so people can get out, outdoor spaces, and how do we provide that for the residents? So I think one of the trends, there's a lot, but I think that's probably one of my favorites, that's come about, or some of the wellness focus out there.
I'm so on board with that. You had me at cold plunge.
Yeah,
You throw in a pickleball court, some
there you
sauna, you know,
go. Yep, that's
it's
right.
funny. Like I've drinking the Kool-Aid. My wife, by the way, is all about walkability. That's her
Yeah,
thing, is
yeah,
walkability, that sense of, to your point, around community
sure.
and health and wellness.
Yeah,
At NMHC, were you at NMHC recently in
wasn't
San Diego?
definitely won't like it, but yeah,
Yeah, they were talking about how much more people have been spending on health and wellness. So really interesting to hear you talk about that, how important those pieces are, that because you're spending more time in your home. But
yeah,
yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll convince my wife to we'll move to a Gables community in Atlanta and sell our house
love
if
it.
you have the gold pledge and the saunas. Now
That's
moving
right.
from the health and wellness to AI. AI is everywhere in every product, every
Yes.
discussion. It seems like
Yeah,
that was a hot topic at NMHC.
of
What
course.
is your thought on AI? How big is AI, especially when it comes to Gables, and how you think about technology?
Yeah, I mean, AI is everywhere, right? We use AI. We've partnered with Me to Lease at Gables, so we have AI that answers phone calls for us. They're able to set up leasing appointments. We get a lot of great data points from it. In our industry, data is so important. How we slice and dice it and determine what we want to do with that data is interesting, but that's what that technology piece is about. So recently we actually partnered, as you guys all know, the fraud in Atlanta has continued. We went from back old school, what I call old school fraud of, a parent or an uncle or an aunt who rented an apartment with their credentials for a family member, right? That was how fraud really started. I don't think we knew it was fraud back then. We knew it was happening. Now we're up to 4 different kinds of fraud, synthetic fraud, things that we just never thought that we would have to deal with. So we actually at Gables partnered with a group called Barrow, and we wanted a solution that would help take us from the start to the finish of, income verification and, IDs and all of that. So kind of a one-stop shop. And so we partnered with a company, and that's really what we're looking to do at Gables, or partner with different groups on that piece on the technology, so that we can actually build what's right for us. Instead of having kind of one thing that you have to fit within, we're building it out, and that has been highly successful for us. So, as you know, with fraud screening, AI is all over that. So I think it can only get better. It's not perfect. There's pros and cons to it, of course, with all technology, smart home technology. We have smart home technology in our apartment communities. I think at one point we're going to get to the point where, someone comes in and they're at the gate and it actually recognizes who it is. The gate opens for that person. There's so many different endless possibilities of what we do with technology. So it's exciting. It's a little scary too. But yeah, we use AI quite a bit with a lot of different programs that we're using.
Kristyn, thank you for the amazing conversation today, for being here with us.
You're welcome.
Any final thoughts for us, for the audience, before we wrap up?
Oh gosh, I don't think so. I mean, we talked about so much different stuff. I think our industry is pretty incredible. If you look at all of the different resources and talk to people and just be involved, be engaged, help other people get to where they want to be, they'll remember you. So I think that is important. Be kind. Know that everyone's going through something, and not everyone. I tell my teams, if I can get you to have a good day 4 out of the 5 work days in the week, it's a success. So we know we're all going to have a bad day here and there, but yeah, just invest in your teams, and keep moving. Work hard, and then get knocked down. Work harder. Get back up. So yeah, I really enjoyed being here today. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah,
Chris,
thanks for
any
coming on.
final thoughts?
This has been a blast. Thank you so much. And I
Awesome.
think it's great to be online, but also to be in real life. So now, I will ask you, any events that you're going to this year that are on your roadmap for must attend events? Is there any kind of
You know
event that
what?
you're like, yeah,
There's a ton of them out there. And so it's really kind of a pick and choose at this point. We actually are doing a huge national meeting with our teams. So our general managers and our service managers are all going to come together in Orlando and get together and talk about everything, and talk about successes, and really reward our teams and say thank you for all of our hard work. So that's probably one of my biggest. I know it's not an industry event, but it's something that I'm really looking forward to as we continue the investment into our team. So
Thanks again, Kristyn. Amazing
yeah,
conversation. Thank
awesome.
you to all of you that join us today live. This was another great episode of the Multifamily Hangout. I want to thank our sponsors for making this broadcast possible: Apartment Snapshot, Kairos Water, and GPS Roof Leak Repairs. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to change the time. We're going to do our live at noon Eastern. We're going to have another amazing guest, Melissa Joy. She is Senior Vice President with Village Green. See you all next week. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
cheers.